Recently, French President Emmanuel Macron hinted at the possibility of sending troops to Ukraine at a meeting of European leaders. Though he did say that there was no consensus on it, these comments did not bode well for Macron. Russia was quick to respond. To this, the Kremlin said that conflict between Russia and the US-led NATO military alliance would become inevitable if European members of NATO troops fight in Ukraine. NATO members too have assured that there is no change in the agreed position, with NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg denying considering sending troops to Ukraine. While diplomacy on this front continues, on ground Ukraine is losing more territory on the battlefield. In the latest, Ukraine's military said that its forces have withdrawn from 2 more villages near the eastern town of Avdiivka. My name is Hem Kaur Soroy, and to discuss the divergent positions on the war in Ukraine and to understand how things will pan out in the 3rd year of this war, we're now being joined by Ambassador Volker Stanzel, former German ambassador to China and Japan, senior distinguished fellow at SWP, German Institute for International and Security Affairs. Sir, thank you so much for joining us.
Pleased to be here.
Now, sir, to begin with, Macron's comments have drawn the ire of not just the Kremlin, but it has also led to sharp responses from NATO allies. Why do you think these comments caused such panic?
Well, NATO had agreed before to avoid everything that would lead to a war between NATO countries and Russia. And sending troops to Ukraine, of course, entails the danger that it would come to direct combat between NATO troops and Russian troops, and that would lead to an escalation, might very well lead to an escalation that we want to avoid. Now, about this remark by Macron, of course, he added later that he does not intend to send combat troops, but that might be necessary to train Ukrainian troops on the ground in Ukraine. Still, the symbolic value of doing that is just great, as the Kremlin's reaction has shown and as the reaction from other Europeans has shown, not the least the German Chancellor Scholz himself, who has right away said this is out of the question.
Right. Now, of course, we've heard the statement from the Kremlin, which sees this as an all-out breach in a direct conflict between NATO and Russia. What's your take on that?
Well, of course, Russia has threatened even nuclear arms in the beginning. And of course, threaten as much as possible is a strategy. Certainly, Putin does not expect the whole of NATO to go into combat with Russia, nor does he, I think, even imagine to go into an all-out war, because Russia, as we have seen over the past 2 years, does not have such a strong army. They have nuclear arms, that is true. But go into an all-out war is something entirely different. What Putin, I think, has gained from the remarks by Macron is the realization that Europe is much less unified than even he might have hoped, because Macron going right away against the attitude of other NATO countries and especially other EU countries, and then mainly, of course, against the German attitude, is something that he must have dreamed of in his best dreams. And he must enjoy himself enormously, I'm afraid.
All right, you're absolutely right. This has revealed the divergences within the alliance as well. NATO's limitations, in fact, have been highlighted through the course of this war. Its support for Ukraine that's fallen short, especially with Ukraine having to cede more territory in the east in the latest, that is. What's your assessment of the role of the international community here?
The role of the international community, well, many countries have tried to suggest how to come to peace and how to start negotiations, not the least the BRICS countries, of which India, of course, is a partner. But so far, this has always run into opposition by Russia. Medvedev, just not even a week ago, has repeated the original Russian demands, and he has said we must occupy Kiev in order to come to peace. So there is no real basis to come to negotiations. What could happen is if you have other countries beside Western countries, I mean the G7 and NATO, other countries exerting much more pressure on Russia. I mean, India, of course, I mean, China, of course, I mean, Lula in Brazil, of course, that might have an effect on Putin. But as long as he feels he's on a long road maybe, but still on the road to victory, I think he will not be ready to seriously negotiate peace.
Right now, let's talk about the key ally here, that is the United States. Joe Biden has been trying to drum up support to get more aid to Ukraine. He also highlighted the dire consequences of not approving the aid bill. Do you think the West can get adequate aid to Ukraine to help in its fight?
Well, it could. And something I think is missing is a declaration by the EU or European countries or non-US NATO members to make up for the 60 billion that we're waiting for from Congress. It seems it takes longer and longer. This does great damage to Ukraine. It means people are dying in Ukraine because they cannot sufficiently defend themselves. So it would be an enormously strong gesture if others picked up the tab that the US is not ready to pay at this moment.
All right. Now, of course, with Russia making advances in the East, how do you think Ukraine is positioned at the moment? What are the prospects in the third year of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine?
Well, I'm sorry, I'm not a military expert, and it's very hard to fathom what is actually happening on the ground. We see Russia's troops are making headway, very slow, but they do. They pay a high price in blood for these victories, while Ukraine is very careful in deploying too many people to the risk of being killed. They just don't have that many. And they run out of ammunition. That is also obvious to see. But what strategy is being discussed in Kyiv? What strategy is being discussed between Ukraine and NATO allies, not the least the United States? This I don't know, and it is very difficult to imagine as an observer how this could be turned around.
All right. Well, Ambassador Volker Stanzel, thank you so much for joining us on WION World is One with your insights and perspective on this.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
For latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.